Debate on Vote 11, Agriculture, Western Cape's Adjustments Appropriation Bill.
Thank you, Secretary. I see the Honourable, the Minister. Minister Winde.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Speaker, I'm tabling today's adjustment budget in a very difficult time for the agricultural sector. Over the past year, the sector has faced a number of challenges brought about by mainly the drought, but then, of course, that has implications, and various diseases have also come and hit us, and specifically the poultry industry hit the hardest. We have not come away unscathed, Speaker. In the past year, we have seen jobs lost in the agricultural and agri-processing sector, and according to the latest figures from Stats South Africa, our projections are also, have also looked at the impact of what happens if we have 100% cut in the supply of water to the agricultural sector for an entire season. The Western Cape has around 193,000 hectares of irrigated fruit and vines, contributing around 13 billion to our GVA, which is an indicator of all the goods and services procured by an industry. This translates into 72% of the total GVA of the agricultural sector, and these farming units employ around 97,000 people. These 97,000 jobs will be at risk in the case of a 100% water cut. Reduced crop results could also drive up food prices, and we know that poor households already spend around 40% of their income on food. This is why we're working hard to mitigate the impact of the drought on jobs and on food security. While the drought is a threat to our Project Khulisa goals, we are still making important progress in growing agriculture and in growing agri-processing. Westgrow has secured investments worth 1 billion into these sectors. In the wine industry, exports to China have increased by 80% since the launch of Project Khulisa. We have supported 5 black-owned businesses to attend the Pro-Wine exhibition and 18 agri-processing firms to attend the Food and Hotel conference just a short while ago in China. I'm happy to report that 5 companies secured new deals at these exhibitions, while others are following strong leads. We are using this adjustments allocation, 71 million in total, as a tool to further support the sector to grow, as it provides employment and food security to millions of households across our province. To support farmers impacted by the drought, we have already started distributing the 40 million rand received from the National Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. These funds are being used for livestock feed for 1,300 commercial and smallholder farmers in all districts of the Western Cape. In the first month of assistance, we will spend more than 20 million rand, exhausting half of the allocation. This illustrates the need for financial support across our province. The Western Cape Department of Agriculture has invested 67 million in drought relief to support these farmers and to keep their businesses running. One of my key priorities is to mitigate the economic and social impact of the drought on families living in rural communities. That is why, to support food security initiatives, we have allocated 2 million for water tanks for food gardens in the West Coast, Cape Winelands, Eden and Central Karoo districts. This water supply will sustain the food gardeners we are investing in our drive to ensure that families have access to healthy food. Food gardeners are also economic drivers, especially in rural communities, where residents sell surplus to earn an extra income. And you would have seen, Speaker, just a short while ago, we recognized one of those small-scale backyard vegetable growers who turned 100 years old, or who turns 100 years old. And at 100 years old, he is still supplying vegetables to the local Clan William Hotel. Speaker, in our bid to ensure that residents and farms in rural communities have access to drinking water, we are investing 10 million in the installation of boreholes. Construction will commence as soon as possible in the Matsikama area, as well as critical areas where the need for additional water supply to humans and animals are the greatest. These boreholes will be shared between the farms where possible and to increase the impact of the intervention. We know that sustainable resource management is also critical to respond to the impact of the water crisis and, of course, to climate change. That is why we're allocating 5 million rand to clearing alien vegetation along the Berg River This is obviously additional to the work that we've been doing there for a long time, and we can start to see the impact there. In many instances, alien plants consume more water than indigenous plants, draining underground water sources. Alien species also limit the flow of water into our rivers. The Berg River project will create 40 work opportunities and 20,000 person days of employment. To better prepare for the changing weather patterns, we know we must continue to invest in research and innovation. Our research farms across the Western Cape, our scientists are conducting groundbreaking studies to keep our farmers competitive and sustainable. Our conservation agriculture program for small grains has resulted in excellent results, even under severe drought conditions. I'd like to share some of the milestones from our trials with you, Speaker. Wheat averaged yields in previous drought years since the long-term trial at Langgewens began realized 1 ton per hectare in 2003. After our conservation agriculture interventions, the yield increased to 2.1 tons per hectare by 2015. Furthermore, at Langgewens, our wheat crop per millimeter water used increased from 12.78 kilograms per millimeter in 2014 to 13.42 kilograms per millimeter in 2016. In the same way, our barley production increased from 12.1 kilograms per millimeter in 2014 to 18 kilograms per millimeter in 2016. These figures show us the benefits of effective use of water under conservation agriculture principles. And it is encouraging when you travel through the West Coast specifically as to how many farmers have adopted this principle in the way that they farm. To ensure that this team can continue the work that they do preparing our sector for the future, we are allocating a further 7.8 million rand in drought assistance to these farms. The funds will be used to purchase fodder for herds at our research farms in Elsenburg, Langgewens, Tegelhoek, Oudtshoorn, George, Nortier, and improve our water systems and irrigation equipment for optimal use of water. Along with the drought, avian influenza also emerged as a threat for our agricultural sector this year. I'm happy to report that no new cases have been confirmed since the end of October. Our vets have started assisting farmers as they prepare to start restocking their chicken farms. And perhaps at this juncture, I really want to say, Speaker, to those vets out there and the department who were behind supporting this industry as it went through some of the toughest times that it's had, was really amazing, and I want to thank them for the 24/7 support that they were giving. Speaker, as the year draws to a close, we will continue to work with the private sector to find long-term solutions in the challenges in this space. We know that being proactive, we can effectively manage our bigger risks. And of course, we must learn from these, and I think already you can hear the discussions when we have the top management meetings as how we take those learnings into programs for next year so that we actually mitigate the possibility, or when this does hit us again, we are far better prepared, and so we must learn from this process. Speaker, with these adjustments in the budget, we are seeking to further grow this sector, ensuring that it remains a major economic driver and able to deliver quality food to residents and international markets. Speaker, I would like to also thank every single person on our farms, in our rural areas, who are in the midst of this worst in living memory drought, 3 years into it. And it is amazing to see the resilience. It's amazing to see how, despite these, people get up every day and try to seriously make plans and become still able to produce food, to continue with doing what they're doing. And I really, really do commend them for that. I would also like to thank the HOD and the department in this regard for the support that they're giving. And as I started in saying, that this is a very, very difficult time. And of course, this department is at the coalface dealing with that industry who is really feeling the pain. You know, it's not as though we can just put a desalination plant in and sort that kind of water out for agriculture. Those input costs would be way too high. We rely so heavily on our dam infrastructure, on our canal systems, and of course, on our rain. And it is this department that faces that industry day in and day out, and I want to thank them very much for it.
Thank you, Minister Wendy. I see the Honourable Member Schaefer.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, the Western Cape is in the grips, as we say, of one of the most severe hydrological droughts our province has seen in decades, the impact of which on the province's agricultural sector has already been detailed by Minister Alan Winde. I must welcome the department's efficient use of agricultural drought relief funds to provide water to food gardens, to protect the food security of rural communities and the vitality of smallholder farmers of all the districts in the province. This, along with a commitment to protect, where at all possible, our agricultural sector, will soften the blow of the drought on this province. Of these efforts, I welcome the department's commitment to protecting and preserving self-irrigated farmland, such as the Philippi horticulture area. The Philippi horticulture area is one of the most crucially demarcated agricultural land developments in the city and yields up to 200,000 tonnes of fresh produce each year, creating up to 30,000 jobs. We look forward to the completion of the study on the PHA in February to assess the way forward. Indeed, the only challenge to a prosperous agricultural sector is change. It is not change itself that threatens the well-being of this industry, but our failure to adapt to it. An ever-changing climate is now a reality in our country, and in particularly our province, and we must be preemptive and proactive when it comes to formulating and carrying out policies to sustain and grow our economy's agricultural sector in the face of this unpredictable weather patterns. Climatic models from leading global researchers have revealed that some of the Western Cape's key agricultural land lies in regions which face possible desertification in the coming decades. If this is the case, then water security is something with which the province will certainly grapple with in times to come. It is up to us to explore alternative means of water provision, not only for human consumption, but to sustain agriculture. The exploration of alternative farming methods to sustain our sector in increasingly water-scarce years is a proactive measure which is necessary to anticipate those climate fluctuations and implement government strategies to protect the vitality of this water-dependent industry. It's in the face of a 100% ban on water use for agricultural purposes that I say here to you today. Speaker, the agricultural sector is at a brink of a challenge that it hasn't seen here in the Western Cape in a long, long time. A potential drop of just 10% in agricultural produce could cost the economy a further 3.2 billion and an approximate loss of 17,000 jobs. Agriculture has already ensured that a comprehensive plan be implemented to reduce water usage on our farms without affecting the crop. The use of those underground aquifers, such as those in the PHA, or the recycling of water through hydroponic farming are just some of the innovative agricultural processes already in use in this province to combat a water shortage. But the reality is that we need to adapt and entirely reform the industry to sustain year-on-year growth in the long run, and in the face of increasingly limited water resources. This is our task moving forward, both as farmers and agricultural specialists, and it is a commitment that we must all make. Speaker, the small amount of 40 million from national government for drought is pie in the sky. We have seen the lack of water infrastructure spend in this province, and we ask national government whether they intend to allocate further funds. After all, this province has been in a 3-year drought, and so far the Western Cape has had to cover most of the cost of that drought. 1,375 commercial and smallholder farmers are currently receiving their monthly drought support to sustain 89,430 animals, and we want to thank the department for that much-needed support. We note too that in order to mitigate that impact of drought on the local economy, the Western Cape is completing a 4 million proactive maintenance plan on the Clan William Dam canal system. Although the maintenance of dam infrastructure is not the responsibility of the Western Cape government, it seems that in the face of no infrastructure spend by national government, that the negative impacts that canals breaks have had on the agricultural sector in the Lower Olifants River area cannot be ignored. So while drought has a direct threat to food security and an economic sustainability on our farmers and agri-workers, it also has exacerbated existing biological pathogens which threaten the agricultural sector at large. The lack of fodder leads to vulnerable livestock with an increase in disease such as blowfly and avian flu. The department also reported that there's a great risk to 23,141 Western Cape households who grow their own food, at which 87% are reliant on piped water. With a warmer and drier winter, an outbreak of avian influenza has been relentless in its attack of our province poultry industry. And to date, the 2.8 million poultry that have died or have been culled so far. But we welcome the fact that there has been no new infections at commercial poultry farms since the 18th of October, as the Minister has mentioned. It is also pleasing to note the department's swift response to this outbreak, making efficient use of the budget allocation to prevent further spread of the virus. This is yet another example of the Provincial Department of Agriculture's proactive approach to preserving the sector which it so serves. We are a committee looking forward to engaging with your department on the finding of its provincial-wide household census of residents working on farms, which it undertakes as a key study to inform future policy. We note that the 3-year agri-worker household census is the most comprehensive database of agricultural workers in South Africa. Research such as this is extremely important, and we welcome the budget allocation towards research, which must always continue if we are to remain competitive as a sector and as a province. Speaker, I'd like to thank the committee for the work that they've done, together as a team effort, applying our minds to the changes that this sector faces. I also want to thank Minister Windy and Joanne Isaacs and her department, who engage with us on a continued basis, and I commend them for their dedication to agriculture. We note the long list of people that have since retired, having spent more than 30 years in this sector, and we thank them for their long service. We look forward to spending another year engaging with this department in the next year. Last but not least, I'd like to thank Zaida Adams for her hard work in her support for the Standing Committee. Speaker, we support this budget.
Thank you, Honourable Schaefer. I now see the Honourable Chachia.
Thank you, Speaker.
You've got support before you even begin, Honourable Chachia.
Let me upfront, Chair, say that the staff, the management, we have a huge challenge in front of you. And we have been doing well to try and deal with some of the challenges. But this water crisis is going to give you challenges. Not only water, it also affects food security. So, but you must understand that you are in this department. This crisis is a DA-made crisis. You know.
Honourable Chacha, please direct the chair and not the administration. Thank you.
I'm looking at you.
Thank you.
One where the headstrong DA continues to dictate to all and sundry, but it does not put its money where its mouth is. No.
Order, please.
The DA rather engages in lame blame games. Everything about national. You're blaming national, shifting your responsibilities. Here, yesterday, they were saying it's their responsibility to do oversight. But what oversight they've been doing to deal with the issues that they were raised long time, that there will be drought in the Western Cape. We continue even today to lose potable water to the sea. And nothing has been done. You know, we know that we will be losing water, but there's nothing plans that are clear in relation to recycling of water to assist our communities, particularly in the rural areas. You know, here in the city of Cape Town, the PHA, when we went to them, met with them, they were saying they can assist to recycle some of the water to different parts to be used for different issues in the households. Did we move to assist them, the department? Nothing. There's still plans, there's still research, but yet the challenge is now, Chair. Instead of acting earlier to avert the dire water crisis, the DA still opt to talk a lot and write long speeches to Daily Maverick when our people are suffering now. You know, they spend their time and energies going to explain themselves that they have plans, and yet their plans, they have not put them practically at the moment. You know, so, Speaker, the issue of bringing alternatives and sufficient sustainable water, that is possible only if the department and the DA can allow themselves to be innovative and allow other people to assist them to deal with issues that deals with water crisis. And we must take it, Speaker, that this issue of water is not only here in the city of Cape Town. Go to the metros where the DA is leading now. Go to Nelson Mandela. There's a water crisis now there. Go to Joburg. Go to Joburg. There's a water crisis now. They're unable to deal with this issue. No proper planning. This is what we're talking about in this DA. You know,
Order.
It's your problem.
Order, please.
All the DA government can do is to give only 74.5 million more for this vote. This is even below the national government contributed. Yet we have billions of reserves that are kept. You know, it's clear that this amount is even less than 10% of the main appropriation of the agriculture budget. And yet, the minister wants to stand up and say they take serious this department. This department is not taken serious. You know, this department is not taken. If we did not have the management that assists the agricultural sector, we would not be here. We must strengthen them, indeed. Because under DA, I'm sure many of them, they have grown white hairs at the moment. You know, the water system of the province, Speaker, is definitely under pressure. But I think it's important, Chair, to see how do we make sure as the department can look at other innovative issues to deal with. Because agriculture or rural areas, in terms of PSG1, we should not only look at farm or agricultural work, we must look at all others that add and make people to do and create that opportunity for them. Not to only look at one, which is currently what is happening. You know, Chair or Speaker, in terms of, it's really bad. You know, you give PTNC 6.7 million for farmer support. What people must do with 6.7 million? When we know we have a challenge, we have a serious challenge. You know, you give 1.6 for veterinary services. 1.6 million. And we know that we have a challenge. The issue, we might not have a problem of the continuous outbreak now of the avian flu, but we know that it's not the first time it happens here in this province. And yet, we did not put even a prevention mechanism to make sure that it does not happen again. So that's the problem that we are sitting, not being able to be innovative and deal with issues of proper. The matter of higher education, Speaker, where about 190,000 was taken away. And now that education, they are left with only 50,000. It's clear that the department is not serious in making sure that we grow and get more graduates and people who are active in this sector. We can't be taking those resources, the personnel that we need so much at this time, away. So Chair or Speaker, what I'm saying, it's not right for the department to shift the whole 2 million of the compensation of employees to only benefit one person who has resigned, who has retired. Why that money was not planned in the main appropriation budget? When you want to give a handshake, because that is a handshake basically to one of your friends there, you know. It is worrying also, Speaker, that almost 22 million was taken away from the compensation of employees. Again, confirming that there are positions that's supposed to be filled that will continue not to be filled. And it does not leave also, it's a pity now we're not doing with annual reports. It does not leave the fact that the staff that continues to leave the department. I'm not going to speak about those issues now because we want to raise them when we deal with that issue at that time. Many staff have left the department because of labor issues in the department. Other than the contribution to public cooperation and private increase, it has increased by a huge 54 million, where money has been taken from the department to private enterprises. To me, Speaker, it's a smack of fiscal dumping, as there is also almost 4 million just now that has been taken for machinery and equipment. Why that money was not planned in the main appropriation, so that this particular allocation, it deals with matters of agency, not fiscal dumping. Speaker, the other issue that I would want to talk to here, there's also whooping 10 million that goes to consultant. More consultant, Speaker, to deal with issues of export control. Why whooping 10 million?
Sorry, Honourable Chacham, if you could finish up, your time has expired.
Not yet, not
Your
yet.
time has expired, Honourable Chacham.
Okay,
I
let
thank
me
you.
finish. Let me finish.
Sorry, your time is up. That was 10 minutes, a whopping 10 minutes, Honourable Chacham.
Whooping 10 million.
In the absence of the ACDP and in the absence of the EFF, I now see the Minister, Minister Windy.
Thank you very much, Speaker. I think, first of all, to the Chair, thank you very much for your contribution. I think, as you highlighted, and I said as well, the risk of 100% cut in water to agriculture is obviously a massive risk to those businesses, but it's a much bigger risk to us in society, the jobs losses, and of course the food security that goes with it. And of course, we're all going to feel the food inflation on the back of this drought. We're already feeling it. But you spoke about aquifers, you spoke about boreholes, and I know that the Honourable Minister Bradell also mentioned it, and it's something that is worrying us a lot because we're putting in so many boreholes as emergency, and I think I need to use this opportunity to call for responsible use of our boreholes. We are pulling more and more water out of our aquifers and underground water, and it is going to be putting more and more and more pressure on that system. And of course, if you suck that down below your extraction levels, you are then in very, very big trouble. That's the 100%. That, of course, agriculture definitely cannot afford, and specifically also our rural communities. But that's why we're putting this money in the adjustments budget towards those specific boreholes, and we will make sure that wherever those are, that they are properly managed, but they are there for making sure that we just alleviate this absolute risk that's facing us at the moment. But you also spoke about the money that gets spent on the canals. And of course, this should not be the money that the provincial government should be spending. But, you know, you have to make decisions sometimes, and you've got to actually support this industry. So those canals in the Clanwilliam area, on the Olifants River, and the supply system to agriculture there, that 4 million rand again that's going to them. We've spent a fair amount of money over the last few years helping them with maintenance, making sure that that water supply, and that water supply, although agriculture is stepping in, those towns down those canals, they also get their water source from those canals. And it's unfortunate that our department, who is supposed to be looking after those, is not actually able to. Yesterday I spoke about how much money was owing, where they owed the money, and the kind of financial position that that department finds itself in. But then we spent the 3 million rand on cleaning up the canal system, the weir system, leading into the canals for the Voelvlei Dam. And of course, when the Minister of Finance came along with me to go and have a look at that, because we had to convince him that we need to spend money, provincial money, on something that's not our competency. And of course, we are going to also be sending an invoice to the National Department for that work as well. But an interesting thing happened when we put the money into the initial, when we initially said we are going to clean this this canal, and we said we are going to clean this canal although it's not our competency. I received this. Can you see whose department this is from while you're muttering there? This comes from the Department of Water and Sanitation. It's a media statement on the 2nd of August 2017. The 2nd of August is a very important date. And in it, it says the Department of Water and Sanitation wishes to dismiss the incorrect reports that it has been stalling to make funds available for the maintenance of water canals in the Western Cape. The cleaning of canals fall within the responsibility ambit of the Provincial Department of Agriculture. Against this backdrop, it is expected the Department of Agriculture in the Western Cape should take the lead in removing the sediment. In other words, this press statement goes on to say that it is not the National Department, it is the Provincial Department's job to clean these canals, right? There's the statement. So I then said, well, this is excellent. Thank you very much, Minister. Put a counter statement out, said to the National Minister that we will take that responsibility. Of course, we will also take the funding that goes with that responsibility, and we will get the water users associations who use that water to give us the money. Because, of course, if you have the function, you need to have the funds, right? Funds must follow that function. Then I got a horrible letter from the Minister. I got a very horrible letter from the Minister who said to me, I'm overstepping my mandate and it's absolutely inaccurate that I am able to take over control of this water system. And in actual fact, the press release of, and I now quote from the press release that she attached to her letter to me, the press release that she says of the 2nd of August, this one is at 3:58 p.m. I'll have to check which time this one was, but it was definitely earlier than that. So then her press department issue a second press statement that is exactly the opposite to the first one. Quite interesting, because suddenly she realized that it wasn't just a quick knee-jerk reaction, that this is actually her responsibility. Anyway, we will continue to deal with this issue. We will send those invoices, because quite frankly, it is when we fail to actually plan within the space of our ambit and our responsibility that we actually fail the people of this country. All the people of this country, all the people of this province, your supporters as well as ours. When we fail to do this kind of thing, when we mess up in this way, it is actually detrimental to every single one of the citizens of this country. And it is shocking, and you should be standing up in actual fighting on behalf of the residents of this province in this arena, not coming here with mentioning all sorts of rubbish that you mentioned. But I will continue on to the Honourable Chacham.
Honourable Chacham, Minister, will you take your seat, please?
The MEC is saying we are talking rubbish. And I understand that that term is not unparliamentary. There are other terms that they can use, that, because if you start using rubbish now, then they must expect next time will be rubbish.
Honourable
Just
Chacham,
expect that.
earlier on the word rubbish was used. Take your seat, please. And we said that rubbish in terms of context. Talking rubbish as compared to you are rubbish. So that, no, and I had undertaken earlier to come back to the House with a ruling after I had gone through all the other rulings regarding rubbish. So that ruling stands, and I will note your second objection or point to the use of the word rubbish.
You
There,
said,
Honourable
Speaker,
Makakis, helped you
Speaker,
out.
you said you were not in the House at that time when I raised the same issue.
No, sorry, Honourable.
So that's the reason that you said you're going to check Hansard and then come.
but that was
this
earlier
time
this
you are in the
morning.
House.
Sorry, Honourable Chacha, that was this morning. We're
Yes.
still on the same day.
You were not-
I haven't had a chance to
you were
peruse.
not in the
it.
House. It
I
was-
haven't had a chance to peruse
No.
Hansard yet since this morning.
No, the point now I'm saying, Speaker, now you are in the House. We have heard the member.
And I am asking you to
So-
take your seat, and I'm telling you that I will revert to Hansard and the audio, and I will come back to the House in need, Honourable Chacha. I thank you. Minister, you may proceed.
Thank you very much. The Honourable Chacham starts, well, I'm not going to comment on that the drought is a DA-made crisis, but I'll talk about the point that he raised on recycling, and I agree with him. I think that we need to really up our game with regard to using recycled water, for using our water a second, a third, and a fourth time. I absolutely agree with him. But I don't agree with him. I won't say the word rubbish, I'll say the nonsensical stuff that comes out around no recycling happens in this province. In this very house, the Honourable Chacham had a bottle of water put in front of him that was recycled water from Beaufort West. It was in this house last year already. Last year already. It provides 20. It provides 20%. It provides 20% of the water of that municipality. But this is not a local government debate. This is an agriculture
Honourable
debate.
Chacham and the rest, please. There's a speaker on the floor. Leave the water in the toilet. You may proceed, Minister Windy.
But this is an agricultural debate. So let's talk about recycling in agriculture, and I also believe that we need to be doing a lot more in this space. But did the Honourable Chacham know that all of the irrigation that takes place in the Durbanville wine region, in that wine valley, that irrigation is recycled water? They've been using recycled water for years already. You do know that, but you've just told us that there's no recycling happening in this province. And I'm now explaining to you that there is recycling, and you said, but we do know that. So then, I don't know, but that's a bit...
Order, please. Honourable
I'm not sure whether that's
Minister
rubbish or
Windy
not.
and Honourable Chacham, you cannot engage in a debate across the floor. We have a speaker. If there's a question to be posed, let's, Honourable Chacham, you have had your shot, your turn. The Minister is now responding. Can we allow the Minister to continue? You may proceed, Minister.
Thank you very much. But I do agree that we need to be looking at all of our local authorities and finding out what amount of water can be utilized out of that black water and sewage systems that they have, that we can actually put these recycling plants in place, that we can use this water for agriculture. And I think it is something that needs to be looked at across the province. With regard to funding, and the Honourable Chacham speaks about insufficient funding and amounts of being put in. He spoke about a dismal amount going to the vets. He must read an adjustments budget with our normal budget, because that's where the funding goes to the vets. What happens in an adjustment time is you have to make a decision on some of the money, whether you will spend it in that program or not, and if not, what should you be spending on it, or should you stop spending some money on a specific program because there are pressures on other. That is what an adjustments budget is all about. But of course, if you look at the last 3 years, and we've heard in this House that no one has been doing anything for 3 years, well, if we look at the total funding spent by this department in the last 3 years, and national, I'll add national to it, but it's 120.404 million rand has gone to drought relief. Of that, we've just received now a 40 million rand amount that has come for us. There's another 40 million rand, if we're talking about disaster and coming out of disaster. The National Department has made 40 million rand available for the whole of South Africa for the avian influenza. 40 million. In this province alone, we've already lost 800 million rand out of that sector. And 40 million has been arranged for the whole country. But we will see what percentage we get of that 40 million.
Please, there's too much noise.
And
Order. Honourable Chakjam, you should have included or spoke more about the avian in your 10 minutes.
he did speak about it before, Madam Speaker. He says that in actual fact, what we should have done is put prevention measures in place that there was no avian influenza in this province. And of course, that's exactly what should have happened in Gauteng, in Zimbabwe, in all of the countries across Europe, in Southeast Asia, in America. It's a second time. No. It's the first time that we've had avian influenza of this strain in the poultry industry in southern Africa. In southern Africa, let alone this province. So will the honourable member please do his homework before he makes these kind of comments. I want to say that, that the amount of money that's come in for drought relief is actually a drop in the ocean. But unfortunately, this is the kind of position that we find ourselves in as a province and as a country. Because we have very, very low growth, very, very little tax income, it is very, very difficult to step in from a government point of view to actually really mitigate the full impact that a disaster like this is having on this industry, agriculture. But I again want to say to every single person involved in trying to mitigate, to innovate, to come up with plans, to showcase that those numbers I spoke about from our research that's happening at Elsenburg with our teams on our farms, but also with our universities and all of those businesses out there in this very, very important sector of ours that earns good foreign income into our region, that actually earns good taxation into our system, that provides food and food security and jobs to so many. I want to thank every single one of them, and we will together make sure that we come through to the other side. We will learn from this, and we will become more resilient. We will become better at what we do, and this applies to every single one of us as South Africans as we deal with these issues. Our fellow South Africans north of us have dealt with that for years now, and they've had the rains. And of course, you saw immediately when the rains happened in the north of our country, how agriculture very, very quickly bounced back. And if it wasn't for agriculture in South Africa, we would be in a way, way worse position because of the north of our country, in a recession far worse than we have at the moment. It is because of agriculture. So I want to thank every single one involved. And perhaps lastly, to those farmers who are now in the north of our country having rain, if you see the generosity from those farmers sending feed to our farmers down here, to our communities, whether they be small, whether they be big, they're receiving this aid and this help. And it is quite amazing to see. And for them, I really want to say thank you very much. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Minister Wendy. That concludes the debate on this vote.